Hey y'all, go subscribe to me on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. My TikTok and my YouTube are at J Crispy, and my Twitch is at J underscore Crispy.
As we continue to stagger and blunder our way toward Armageddon, I find myself thinking more and more of a 55-year-old interview with Orson Welles. It was 1970 during one of Welles's several appearances on the Dick Cavett show, which was long before my time, but
Long
fortunately it has
before
been
my time.
preserved for we later generations on YouTube. And this particular interview includes Wells sharing his memories of backpacking through Europe as a young man and how, on one particular evening, he found himself sat at a dinner table next to a man who was the leader of what was then a fringe political movement that most people didn't take very seriously.
Let me guess, Nazi Party.
That fringe political movement was the Nazi Party,
Yeah.
and that leader was Adolf Hitler.
He made so little impression on me that I can't remember a second of it. See, he had no
Because he was
personality
a
whatsoever.
bitch.
Wonder if he was invisible.
Wonder if under
He
hypnosis
was
it would come
evil.
out, dude.
No, I think there was nothing there that anybody'd remember. Till you had 5,000 people yelling, "Sieg Heil, Heil Hitler." That's the whole point of the story.
And you know what's crazy? That shit's happening in America almost 100 years later. Like, what the fuck?
That there wasn't anything to remember.
I've watched that clip over and over again these past few years and thought about it even more often as it remained obvious that Donald Trump and his political movement were not going away. It's
Shit right here. It's that shit. These are Mozzie sticks. They're like $1.25 at Walmart. Can't beat them. Throw them in the air fryer for like 12 minutes, 350 degrees.
something that Trump and Hitler share in common that we don't talk about nearly as often as all that other stuff they share in common, which is understandable, but I can't get over how unimpressive Wells found Hitler to be. So little personality that if he had not turned out to be Hitler, if he hadn't started a world war and carried out the most infamous atrocity in human history some years after that dinner,
Yeah,
Wells wouldn't have remembered him at all.
that's crazy.
And he was sitting right next to him. No personality.
I mean, imagine that. What would you do if you was sitting there next to Hitler? I mean, what would you tell him? Especially if you knew what was about to come before he knew what was about to come. I don't know. That'd be crazy.
No wit, no intellect, no remarkable or attractive qualities at all. Doesn't that sound like it could be describing Donald Trump?
No,
Has
no.
Donald Trump
Trump's such an arrogant motherfucker. As soon as he walks in the room, you're gonna remember his dumb ass. At least I think I would.
ever said a single interesting thing
No, but
in
he
his
said
life?
a lot of stupid shit.
Said offensive things. He said
Mhm.
horrifying things.
Mm-hmm.
He's said embarrassing things
Mm-hmm.
and cringe-inducing things
Mhm.
and infuriating things, but interesting things? I don't think so. I don't remember any interesting things that Donald Trump has ever said. He's a person who seems utterly bereft of cleverness or insight or thoughtfulness. You listen to him
For
speak
sure.
for 30 seconds and you get the unmistakable impression that
He's a babbling buffoon.
he's never had an original thought.
Yup. A babbling buffoon.
Hitler didn't rise to power because of his irresistible personal magnetism. Some people refer to that, and some people talk about how magnetic and charismatic he was, but I have always found those descriptions of him to be grossly exaggerated and overstated. I've seen film of Hitler giving speeches and doing his big, talking at his big rallies and talking with his officers and, being public
Just like
Hitler,
Trump.
being the public Hitler that seduced all those other people to follow him and to entrust him with all that power. And I just
Because the main majority of people are sheep. If you tell them what they want to hear, they'll follow you. It's just that simple.
don't see it. I just don't see a great charismatic leader. And I don't think that's the main reason why he was able to rise to power. I think he rose to power because he was a frustrated failure who channeled his resentment and insecurity and entitlement and bigotry into the political movement at a place and time in history when those grievances and the lies and the
It's crazy when people talk about Hitler, it sounds just like they're talking about Trump just 100 years later. This is literally the American Nazi movement 2.0.
scapegoating invented to justify them appealed to a large enough number of people for that movement to gain traction. And doesn't that sound familiar? Trump and his minions talk a lot these days about meritocracy, but what they really represent is mediocrity. The rule not of the most deserving, but the rule of the mediocre. They are profoundly ignorant, shallow, unskilled, unremarkable people. And
you know what else is also indicative of all those people? They're all very, very rich. It kills your personality for sure.
We wouldn't give most of them a second look were it not for the fact that they kind of run the country now.
God have mercy
Hitler,
on America.
When Orson Welles encountered him, Trump, for years, for decades, was a joke, a pop culture punchline. He was the guy who went broke running casinos. He was the guy who traded on his name and built him.
And now you guys got him running America. I'll talk about Trump being such a big businessman. He ain't no businessman. He's a failed businessman. The only reason he has all this money is because he was born into wealth. I'm pretty sure I've heard a statistic somewhere that 60% of very wealthy individuals were born into wealth. Like I've stated many times before, you can't just get as wealthy as these people are without hurting people. It's not a good thing. It's not a normal thing. When you get that much money and you start hoarding that much money, it will be the downfall of society if we continue to let it happen.
Himself up as a B-list celebrity through the sheer force of his own relentless self-promoting bullshit. He was the guy whose greatest success before entering politics was pretending to be a brilliant business person on a reality show. He was a deeply unserious person who we only started taking seriously when we had no choice. I've called Trump and his accomplices and followers unserious before, and I've sometimes been challenged on that by people who assert how much damage Trump and his associates have done to the United States and the world, and how much more damage they're trying to do. And I'm not denying that at all. That's true. The threat presented by Trump and his movement is very dangerous and very serious.
I heard a lot of people.
Tell how dangerous he is by now. I don't know what to tell you.
Either, buddy.
But part of what makes him and his movement so dangerous is that he is such an unserious person. Someone like that, acquiring the kind of power Trump has acquired.
The sheep are always led by the fool.
I can't think of a threat more serious. When an incompetent person believes themselves to be highly competent, that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, after the psychologists who first described it more than a quarter century ago. Donald Trump.
What is the Dunning-Kruger? Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias for people with low ability in a particular area to overestimate their own competence in that area, often because they lack knowledge or skills necessary to accurately assess their own performance. That was about right. You hit it on the money, man.
Trump is the poster child for the Dunning-Kruger effect. He is a Dunning-Kruger president. His is a Dunning-Kruger presidency. And if he gets his way over the course of the next few years, it could become a Dunning-Kruger dictatorship. Trump's close.
Only hope that it gives me in America that he will never be able to become dictator is because of that Second Amendment. For sure. You know, I would hope and I would pray that if he did try to pull something like that, even his most diehard supporters would turn. I don't know, though. This is like the most cultish shit I've ever seen. So he may be the downfall of America. I guess we only will know. Time will only tell. But if we are able to vote him out in 2028, best believe by 2028, everybody's going to hate him, just like 2020. He didn't win in 2021 because everybody hated him. Everything he talks about how everything was so good. I remember, you may not remember, but I remember when you couldn't even walk around with a MAGA hat. So I'm just praying that by 2028, the people wise up again, because apparently America has a very, very faulty memory.
Closest advisor and shadow president this time around, Elon Musk. And actually, you know what? Elon Musk. That reminds me, there's another thing Trump and Hitler have in common. They both hang out with Nazis. Anyway, Musk also embodies the Dunning-Kruger effect. He's a perfect match for that stereotype of the weird middle-aged guy who hangs out with decades younger people because he's desperate to be thought of as one of the cool kids himself. And hopefully you all know by now the facts that all of his claimed inventions and innovations are actually the work of other people that he has wrongfully stolen the credit for. He is not actually the real-life genius Tony Stark that he desperately wants us all to think of him as. He is a fraud and a phony. Yeah. But he is at least competent enough to realize that Trump's obliviousness to his own incompetence makes him easy to manipulate. And that doesn't make Musk anything special.
No.
Seemingly everybody other than Donald Trump realizes how easy Donald.
It's crazy because back in the day, I used to think Musk was pretty dang smart. But then it comes out, I got older, and I realized all these companies he runs, it doesn't make him any smart. He's not the one actually building the space rockets. He's not going to be the one doing the work. The ones who do the work, he's just going to exploit, make money off of it, and then take all their work and recognition and say it was him. You know, so anybody who believes otherwise is a fool. It hasn't looked into it because you don't sit on Twitter all day typing out trolling comments, bullshit conspiracies, and actually be doing real shit. They have their minions to do shit, and then they just bank up on that money.
Donald Trump is to manipulate. The man has no principles, no moral center, certainly no shame. He has a simple, narcissistic worldview, and on top of that is an incoherent collection of the most recent things he's heard from other people that don't threaten that narcissistic worldview. Why has Trump made immigrants?
Why do you think everybody in his first term turned on him? Because as soon as they weren't his little buddy bowing down to him, he turned on them. Oh, he's a he's a man that I could imagine even his most diehard supporters after a while, if they really got to know him, would hate the man. Personally, we see what we see, but I can only imagine how much harder it is. Like poor Melania.
Immigrants the number one target of his government sponsored domestic terrorism campaign because he has some deeply held belief, some conviction that immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, present a danger to the American way of life? No, I don't think so.
By the way, I'm born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. Right on the border, man. Everybody wanted to act like we just got flooded with immigrants. Like I said, Tucson's known for having immigration, people coming through into the United States. Nothing changed. We had just as many immigrants around as we did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and same thing now. It's all bullshit.
I think it's because someone at some point whispered that in his ear, or at least whispered that the anti immigrant stuff would be a good way to attract votes and donations. And that didn't contradict his pre existing narcissistic worldview. It sounded good to him, so he went with it. Same reason why he's targeted trans people. Same reason why he's allowed Elon Musk to take a chainsaw to the budget and disrupt and threaten to destroy everything from foreign aid to public education to our nuclear arsenal.
Oh, hell no. I would not trust that man with our nuclear arsenal. He's the type of person that would get a mean comment on Twitter and blow that person's house to smithereens.
Someone told him it was a good idea. And Trump doesn't know enough to disagree. Why has he alienated and threatened some of the U.S.'s closest and most reliable allies and trading partners? Why has he
Because he's an idiot.
Decades of American foreign policy? Why did he recently blame Ukraine for starting its war with Russia when it was Russia's military that invaded Ukraine?
Thank you.
Because somebody told him that. Somebody said that.
Of course he
Vladimir
knows that.
Putin himself told that to Trump and told it to him in a way that made Trump feel like he would be seen as the smart one and the strong one if he took Russia's side. And understand, I'm not saying Trump doesn't actually believe these.
Let's believe the only reason that he's trying to pull support from Ukraine or end this war is because of pride and greed. Only reason. And if they end this war, it's going to be bad for Ukraine, especially if the United States don't support them. No matter what, they're going to have to give up some of their land. And if it's not something we would do, it's not something we should expect them to do. That's what being allies means.
These things. I think he does actually believe them. I think he does actually believe that immigrants are all criminals, or at least mostly criminals. I think he actually does believe that trans people are sexual predators.
Go hang out with the trans person for a week. Go hang out with the immigrant for a week. All these people have these negative opinions on people and outlooks on people, and they haven't even been around these type of people. So many of these people who hate on trans people, they've never met a trans person a day in their dang life.
I think he does believe that our trading partners and our allies and the recipients of our foreign aid are parasites who are taking advantage of us. And
parasite.
I think he does actually believe that Vladimir Putin is the good guy. I think he believes
that's crazy, dude.
But he believes it because he's a massive shithead who swallows bullshit.
See, I think he knows Vladimir Putin isn't the good guy. But I think he thinks Vladimir Putin is going to be the best for his power and for his bank account.
Just as easily as he spews it himself. Not because he has any reason for believing these things that he could possibly articulate. He's not a complicated guy. None of these people are terribly complicated. Bigots and conspiracy theorists never are. That's why Trump and his followers are so quick to glom on to simple solutions to complex problems. Government, the budget, trade, diplomacy, war, human biology, and gender and sexuality. It doesn't matter what the subject is or how complex that subject really is. They're convinced
Every time they talk about this shit, there's never any nuance, that's for sure.
that it's all actually very simple. And the solution to every problem is simple because they are simple. They're dim-witted, credulous, dishonest people who have convinced themselves that they are sharp-eyed geniuses and fearless truth-tellers. They're boring and facile and easily led, and now we are all in a lot of trouble because enough people who are even more gullible and short-sighted than Trump voted to hand over the federal government to him, and not enough of us.
Don't forget to the world's richest man, too. Like I've said before, anybody who thinks that the world's richest man cares about the bottom 75, 80% of the population is... I don't know what to tell you. Motherfucker don't care about us. All he cares about is money and power.
Who knew better, or should have known better, voted to stop it.
It's because their hate blinds them.
There's another very thin thread that connects Donald Trump to Orson Welles, besides how much Welles's description of Hitler reminds me of Trump. It's the fact that Donald Trump's favorite film, or so he has claimed, is Citizen Kane. In 2002,
See what Citizen Kane is about. What is Citizen Kane, the movie, about? When a reporter is assigned to decipher newspaper magnate Charles Foster Kane's Orson Welles' dying words, his investigating gradually reveals the fascinating portrait of a complex man who rose from obscurity to staggering heights. So Kane's friends and colleagues, Jediah Leland, Mistress Susan Alexander, shed fragments of light on Kane's life. The report fears he may never penetrate the mystery of the elusive man's final word, Rosebud. What a fucking weirdo, dude.
the great documentarian Errol Morris interviewed Trump as part of a project that was never actually completed. And during this interview, Errol Morris asked Trump to talk about Citizen Kane, to offer his review, his take, his analysis of Citizen Kane. And here's part of what Trump said.
The word Rosebud, for whatever reason, has captivated moviegoers and movie watchers for so many years, and to this day is perhaps the single word. And perhaps if they came up with another word that meant the same thing, it wouldn't have worked. But Rosebud works.
No, if you could give Charles
Seems like he
Foster
hasn't
Kane
watched the
advice,
movie.
what would you say to him?
Get yourself a different woman.
You see how versatile he is? He's not just a Dunning-Kruger president with aspirations to be a Dunning-Kruger dictator. He's also a Dunning-Kruger movie critic. His understanding of Citizen Kane is so rife with self-serving projection and so boneheaded and crude that
Yeah.
I'm tempted to assume he's never actually watched the movie. But then again, how could you tell?
I haven't even watched the movie. Just looking it up for 2 seconds, I could tell he didn't know nothing about that dang movie.
Marcella says they didn't get with him to talk. They ambushed, talking with Zelensky. They ambushed Zelensky
Yeah.
with every intention.
This is Pastor Ed Travers from the, what is it? What's the name of that church? The Church Without Walls. And he's talking about, I think this was like the day of or the day after Trump kicked Zelensky out of the White House after making a fool of himself.
Of bullying him. On that note, we're going to talk about something else, because I watched a bunch of different parts of it. I watched the entire thing, and I'm with.
True, we watched the whole thing on stream last night, almost 2 hours, and motherfucker just spat out a whole bunch of lies and jerked himself off the whole time.
I don't think they let him talk, but there was a guy who asked a question. And he asked a question to President Trump, and then he asked a question for Zelensky, to President Zelensky. I think his name's Brian Glenn, or it's Glenn Bryan. I can't remember. He's with one of the really right leaning news.
Yeah, the reason they won with the right-leaning news is because that's the only type of news that's affiliated with the White House and with Trump now. He kicked out any other left or even center style news. Any news that wouldn't jack him off and bow down to him, he said, you got to go.
News, right-leaning news agencies. And so he asked President Trump, something along the lines of, do you want to be remembered as a peacemaker? Oh, come on, man. Who says, no, I want to be remembered as a warmonger? Yes, of course I want to be remembered as a man who brought peace to the world, a person who brought peace into the world. Yes, I want to be remembered as that. But Trump took the question very graciously and gave an answer. And in the middle of the answer, reminded everybody in the room about winning an election and how bigly he won the election and by how many votes he won the election and how I think he's still insecure. I think he's insecure about winning the election because he's continuously reminding people that he won the election. Hey, do you like lemonade? Absolutely. I love lemonade. And by the way, do you know that I won the election by a gazillion votes and it was no contest? Only 3 people voted for the other person. Anyhow, then the guy, Brian or Glenn, I can't remember which, he turned to President Zelensky and he said, and my question for you is, my question for you, he said, is do you own a suit? Do you own a suit? You're here and Zelensky went back and forth with him.
Shit was so rude. People talking about it's disrespectful for him not to wear a suit. That's crazy.
You're here in this beautiful place at this beautiful time. This is an important, auspicious day, and you're not wearing a suit. How come you're not wearing a suit? I thought it was Barney.
The motherfucker has a country at war. Fuck your suit.
Barney from How I Met Your Mother there for a little while, because he was really focused on the suit. And Zelensky, again, he went back and forth. He's like, is it a problem? Yeah, it's a problem. I think many Americans have a problem that you're not wearing a suit. And Zelensky said, well, I'll put a costume on when the war's over.
Yeah.
And again, they go back and forth a little bit. What do you say about that? What do you say to that?
I say you go, Zelensky.
Why bring that up? Why is it important that he wears a suit? Because
they want him to bow down. He didn't kiss their ring and they're mad about it because they're fucking narcissists.
Everybody else in the room is wearing a suit because it makes Trump feel respected. Wearing a suit, getting dressed up, makes him feel like he matters. Why doesn't he feel like he matters if you come in and
look at the comment down here? Oh, I guess you guys can't see it, but right under the video, there's a comment that says Elon never wears a suit, and he is fired. He's allowed to fire half our government workers. Right there. Real shit, man. They're fucking hypocrites, dude. They made a fool out of that. They're supposed to be there for our partners while they're in a horrible war, and they're acting like buffoons. None of our allies are going to trust us after this shit.
The t-shirt. Why would he feel like he matters less if you come in a sweater? Why would he feel like he matters less if you walk in with flip-flops and in shorts? Why would the way you are dressed impact how Donald Trump feels respected or disrespected? That's, to me, that's it's kind of silly.
Yeah,
If
hell
I
yeah.
need people around me to be dressed in a very certain way, that says more about me than it
Yeah.
says about the people who are dressing how they want to dress. If I feel
Especially
like
while their whole
you better
country's
be
at
dressed
war.
up. Man, I did a funeral one time, and years ago, I did this funeral, and the guy's grandchildren came in. Now, it's not uncommon. This is just the first time this happened at a service that I was doing. But I've come to understand it's not uncommon at all. There's a lot of people out there who are unchurched. They have no idea. They have no idea what it means to go to church. And so whereas I was used to everybody coming in and wearing their best, coming in and wearing a shirt, wearing pants, maybe not a tie, maybe not a coat, but you know, sort of dressing up for the moment. These folks came in.
Respect is not about what you wear. It's about how you address somebody and how you talk to them. And that whole time Zelensky was at the White House, even when they were berating him and telling him that he wasn't, I can't remember exactly what they were berating him about, he was still respectful. So don't go on no bullshit about, oh, he didn't dress for the occasion. That was disrespectful. No. What would have been disrespectful is if he would have stormed out of there and been like, fuck y'all, I don't need y'all, da 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 da. But no, he said, look, man, I accept your guys' help. I accept your support. Like, what else do you want him to do? Like, he's at war. You can't expect him to kiss Trump's ring and bow down to the man. Especially after the way Trump's acted to him. Like, hell no.
And one guy was wearing a muscle shirt, like a cut off shirt, right? And I'm like, holy jump, I've never seen that before. A woman came in wearing gym pants with the name of some university across her backside. So, oof, I've never seen that before. Like, why? They had no idea. Does it matter? Did they love their grandpa less?
No.
Were they showing disdain? Were they showing disrespect? Absolutely not.
Oh,
They
no.
mourned, they cried, they were there for all the right reasons. That's what matters. Did Zelensky walk in there because he's trying to show disrespect to the president of the United States? No, he's trying to show solidarity with his men and women back home. He's trying to show solidarity with his population who have been suffering for 3 years. He's trying to show solidarity. He's trying to show them that, hey,
Trump don't give a fuck. Because no matter what, even if he puts us into a war, he's never going to be affected.
Even though I am here, I am not going to, I'm not going to take in all the luxury and all the prestige and all the pomp of this moment. No, I'm still with you. In my heart, I'm still with you. What I really wanted to talk about when I came to this was, look, what can we learn from it, right? So Glenn Bryan, whatever his name is, he said these things to the president of Ukraine. It's quite insulting. I thought it was insulting. I thought it was a
If the Christian folks in this world listen to this minister, they would be a lot more Christ-like. That's for sure.
lame question. I thought it was a garbage question. I thought it showed us that that they had a lot of disdain for President Zelensky. And then I thought of another story from 1 Samuel. I thought of David's anointing. David the prophet. God is not happy with the current king, Saul. God sends Samuel to see Jesse and to visit Jesse and spend time with Jesse and his family, and in particular, Jesse, to have Jesse bring his sons forward. One of the sons is going to be the next king. And Jesse sees the first guy. He's like, he's a monster of a man. Excuse me. Samuel sees the first guy, and he's a monster of a man, right? He's a big, brash warrior kind of guy, and he says, "So God, is this the one?" And God says, "No, he's not the one." And the next son comes along, and he's big and tough and strong, and this is surely the one. No, he's not the one. The next guy comes along, and he's big and handsome and gorgeous and all the things that you might imagine from a king. And Samuel says, "This obviously must be the one." And so God says, "Listen, enough of this. You're looking at what's on the outside. You're looking at how big they are. You're looking at how good looking they are. You're looking at how strong they appear. You're looking at how tough they appear. You're looking at how they're dressed. That's not how I measure the man."
Zelensky got heart, man. You gotta remember when Russia was dropping bombs in Kyiv, he didn't run. He sat there and he did what he had to do. Trump's bitch ass would be in a nuclear bunker as soon as the first bomb hit America.
I do not measure the man. Do not measure people by their outward appearance. I don't measure people by their outward appearance. I measure people by what's in their heart. I measure people by their spirit. I measure people by their fortitude. Keep going. Keep looking. Goes through all the sons. And eventually, the one that's chosen, Samuel says, "Jesse, is this all your sons?" Jesse says, "Well, no, I got another fellow, but he's out in the fields. Go get him." You don't want him. He's tiny. He's itty bitty. He's young. He's way too pretty. He's very effeminate. Go get him.
Hey.
And so David comes in. Now, he's not a big, strong warrior. He doesn't look to be a big, strong warrior. He doesn't look tough. He's a poet. He's a singer. He's a musician. He spends his days with the flocks of sheep, which means he's actually pretty good with a weapon. But Samuel looks at him, and God goes, "Yep, that's the one," because of his heart. Nothing to do with his appearance. Nothing to do with how he looks. Nothing to do with what he's wearing. Everything to do with his heart. We mustn't make the same mistake that Glenn Bryan, whatever his name is, made. He's judging Zelensky. He judged Zelensky based on what Zelensky was wearing.
That just proves that Jesus loves the LGBTQ community. So why can't y'all?
Judged President Zelensky based on how he appeared in that room. He judged President Zelensky by how everybody else in that room was dressed in their suits, and Zelensky was in basically a sweater, camo sweater, right? Dressed like he's a common soldier. He decided that Zelensky was somehow less than. And for what it's worth, my guess is he decided Zelensky was less than long before Zelensky ever showed up. If Zelensky had showed up in a suit, he still would have been looking down on Zelensky.
Oh, yeah.
For whatever reasons he have. We mustn't make the same mistake.
People
are going to commit.
Don't forget, it was Trump who started attacking Zelensky first. Zelensky never did anything but stand up for his people and be in a war and expect our cooperation. As if it was the other way around, we would expect their cooperation.
Into our lives, and they're going to appear in many different ways. That has nothing to do with what's in their heart. They're going to come to us. They're going to come to us dressed in muscle shirts. They're going to come to us dressed in three-piece suits. They're going to come to us dressed in wonderful, beautiful prom dresses and in wedding dresses and ball gowns. They're going to come dressed to us in t-shirts and shorts and tennis shoes. They're going to come dressed. I once went to church. It was a Sunday. I was sailing in a regatta. I went to the early service in a church, and I knew I was going to have to jump into my boat. As soon as the church service was over, I showed up in flip-flops and in a bathing suit and in a t-shirt with my hat and my life jacket in hand. I once went to church in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I went to church in Fayetteville, North Carolina one time. Beautiful church in flip-flops, shorts, and hungover. Like hungover to death. But I went to church. And I remember walking up for communion, flip-flop, 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 all the way up. And hearing my shoes and the sound of my shoes echoing through the entire building, and I could feel every eye on me. Don't ever judge somebody based on their appearance. You've no idea.
Jesus didn't judge. Why should you? Look at all his folks. He was best friends with a prostitute. I'm telling you, the modern day church has strayed away from Christ and let religion take over everything. Because you gotta remember that religion is man-made. Christ's love is eternal. If you're truly a Christian, you will part from your hateful ways and show love and mercy to the people, not what they're showing nowadays.
Idea what's in their heart. You have no idea what kind of person they are. Don't ever judge somebody based on their clothes, based on if their hair's been cut lately, how long or how disheveled their beard might be. Don't judge somebody based on their flip-flops. How out of place their attire seems to be for the moment, in that moment. You've no idea who they are on the inside. You have no idea. We have no idea how God sees them. The truth of what God sees in them. Absolutely none. Again, I'm gonna come back to, we often go to Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, the 25th chapter, right? Whatever you've done for the least of these, you've done for me. I am there with them. We look at, is it Hebrews?
That's why I tell everybody, you can still be a Christian and still be gay. You can still be a Christian and still be trans. God is with us. People that are pulling this hateful stuff against us, they're not God, they're not Christ. Christ loves us and he is with us.
Is it Hebrews that says something along the lines of, we have been in the presence of angels and never known it? We can look at the disciples after the resurrection, and they're on the road to Emmaus. They're on the road to Emmaus. The Lord has risen. The Lord has risen indeed. And they come across a guy and he's like, hey, what's going on? Why are you so excited? And they say, what? Haven't you heard? Are you the only person in Jerusalem that's not heard this? And they keep walking. They're all walking together. Can you mind if I walk with you? No, please come along. We'll tell you about what happened. And they tell this guy all about what happened, about Jesus being crucified, and then 3 days later being raised from the dead, and being seen by so many different people and doing so many different things. And they talked about the wonder of the gospel and the power that Jesus exhibited in this world. And they have no idea the entire time that they're walking in the presence of Jesus, that this is Jesus that they're sharing his story to. Because his outside appearance doesn't look like the outside appearance that they had grown used to over the years. We mustn't ever make the same mistake that people like this guy, this quote-unquote journalist, made. Do not judge people by their appearance. You have no idea. We've no idea who they truly are. Amen.
I have talked about this guy before. His name is Dusty Devers, the name of a failed porn star. He's an Oklahoma state senator, and
they're the ones that are going to have the moral authority over us and tell us, oh, we're bad because we're porn stars, because anything you can think of. And then these are some of the worst people.
He's a hard-right, MAGA-loving Christian nationalist in one of the reddest states in the country. So he's excited. I mean, he knows very...
Christian nationalists love Christ. They love their nation. They are not patriots. They want to rule the nation. They want to own the nation. They want it to be an authoritarian dictatorship. There ain't no such thing as a true Christian nationalist.
very well that he's probably not going to get a lot of legislation passed. But in Oklahoma, if you propose the most extreme kind of legislation, you're going to get a lot of attention for it. And that's kind of the only thing he's been good for, getting attention. And back in January, he announced this. He announced a slate of legislation to restore moral sanity in Oklahoma. Look at the
That's
date on that
crazy,
one,
dude.
January 22nd. And basically, what Dusty Deaver said is, I'm filing 8 bills that I think are the morally correct thing to do. And I want to highlight just a few of these here because he listed them. Look at this one, Senate Bill 456, the Abolition of Abortion Act. He thinks women in Oklahoma have it too easy.
I don't know why people always want to try to put the moral authority in the government's hands. Like, the government has nothing to do with moral authority.
Sure, they can't access an abortion doctor. Sure, they can't get the procedure done. But you know what they can do? They can order pills, morning after pills, Plan B pills. And so he wants to make
At least for now, right?
sure they're not allowed to do that either.
Yeah.
He says, while clinics may be prohibited from performing abortions, pro-life laws currently being enforced allow mothers to order abortion pills online and administer them herself. We can't
I'd rather them get them from a doctor than get them from somebody in a back alley.
allow women to take care of themselves. Are you kidding me? And so his bill would basically close that loophole and punish any woman who takes a pill, anyone who helps her procure a pill. That's one of his 8 things that he wants to do. Here's another one. We talked about this one, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Senate Bill 228, the Covenant Marriage Act, which would make it harder for couples to get divorced. When you get married and you sign your wedding license, you would have the option of signing a covenant marriage, which basically says you can only get out of this marriage under very specific circumstances. If you don't
That's a very slippery slope to get into, man. I ain't with it.
love your husband anymore, too bad. If he's emotionally abusing you, no one cares. You're stuck. That's what a covenant marriage is. And at the bottom here, it says couples
Told you, man, if they're going after my civil rights, they're going after everybody else's civil rights too.
who opt into a covenant marriage would be eligible for a $2,500 tax credit. So Dusty Devers was literally done. Sorry, I think I disappeared for a second. He's bribing these people to get a covenant marriage, even though it is a bad decision for anyone who does it. And as
Yeah.
I said in a previous video, who is more likely to get a covenant marriage? A lot of Christians who are pressured to do it, and a lot of young people who are also Christian who get married very young. So they're delusional.
Remember, y'all, the modern day Church of Christ is not Church of Christ. It's a cult. Many, many ways from
enough to think the first relationship they're in is the one that's going to last forever. So that's a bad, bad bill. And there's one
Yeah,
more
it
here
is.
that's disturbing. SB 829, prohibiting no fault divorce. And what this bill would do is when you get divorced in Oklahoma, you have to explain to the judge, to the courts, why you are getting divorced. And it's not really a big deal. You can just say incompatible and be done with it. And then you don't have to share your business with anybody.
How
You
it
know,
should
just
be.
say irreconcilable differences. We're out. We'll take care of the paper.
Should never bring law into forcing people to stay being married. Not what the law is supposed to be here.
For work and the kids, and now we're separated, we're done. And this would ban that. Look at what the first sentence says. This bill would end no fault divorce in Oklahoma by removing incompatibility as a justification for divorce. The other reasons would be allowed to stay, but the one that most people cite, just incompatibility, would be off the table, which means you either have to lie to leave or just make something else up. I don't know. But that's Dusty Deaver's great plan to restore moral sanity back to Oklahoma. Other
Fuck
things on that
Dusty
list.
Devers.
He would ban pornography, just all of it. Not just like obviously illegal
That's the real reason this bill failed, was because
forms of it. I mean, going to a website and watching it in the comfort of your own home when you're an adult by yourself, watching people who made that stuff consensually. He wants all of that banned. He also wants to ban any kind of drag performances for children. Just cause.
just
Okay. And when he was asked to explain all this, here's how he
crazy because these people think that somebody dressed in drag reading a book to a kid is bad. Like, how is that bad?
explained this slate of bills. Contrary to what the left would have us believe, it doesn't have to be this way. We can and should imagine and move toward a society that celebrates virtue in the public square rather than vice. We can restore normalcy, decency, and morality. We can protect the most vulnerable, restore a high
They
view
don't
of
care about
marriage,
the most
and
vulnerable.
shield children from explicit material that can warp their innocent minds, like watching a man in drag.
Hmm.
We simply must have the courage to stand against the most radical and degenerate elements of the far left. This is Dusty Devers, by the way, the same.
Remember, it's always the Republicans that are getting outed as predos. So when you hear them talk about this shit, don't believe them. They're evil people, man.
Guy who thinks the thrice married, never read the Bible guy who was with a porn star while his third wife was having his fifth child. I mean, that guy, that's the height of moral sanity for Dusty Devers, right? But this is what he pushed. And the reason I bring all this up is that there's this week, actually, last week, I should say, there was finally some action taken on these bills in Oklahoma in a very red legislature.
And only thing that gives me hope right now, only type of shit that gives me.
The reason it's interesting to me is because even Republicans have made it clear they want nothing to do with this shit. Unbelievable. Because Oklahoma being as red as it is, if any state's going to pass any of these bills, it's a place like Oklahoma. And yet, okay, so consider the anti-abortion bill. It failed in the Senate Judiciary Committee because this involves laws. It failed 6-2. 6 people did not want this bill to be voted on. And guess what? There were only 2 Democrats on that committee, which means 4 Republicans joined their ranks in opposing this bill. And during the debate, Republicans asked Devers, like, well, how does this apply to women who might travel out of state? Because a lot of women are doing that. If they need an abortion, they can't get it in Oklahoma. Maybe they go to a neighboring state to get it done. If this bill prohibits abortion, what are you going to do about those women who are going to other states? Are you going to make them take a pregnancy test before and after they leave the state? Like, how are you going to prove that a woman is pregnant and then went out of state to get an abortion and came back not pregnant? How are you going to prove that? And how do you prove that a woman took an abortion pill in the privacy of her own home rather than just had a natural miscarriage? They asked him these questions in the committee hearing, and his answers were like, the pregnancy test thing is beyond the scope of the law. Like, not my responsibility. He just doesn't want to think about the nuance of what he's suggesting. He also said the death penalty might indeed be justified. This is what he said about this. Unbelievable.
I don't know, man. It's a hard one for me. I don't even know if I believe in the death penalty. I was raised that. I was raised in a Christian family and stuff like that, and I still hold some of those morals. I don't identify as a Christian, but I was always raised that God said that we should not kill, part of the 10 Commandments. So, I don't know.
Believable.
Tough one.
If abortion is prenatal homicide, and I believe it is, That's the question that's before us. Is abortion prenatal homicide, and should it be treated the same as murdering a born person? And then
No,
a Republican asked him,
not
"Are
at
you
all.
saying the abortion provider would be an accessory to murder because that would lead to the death penalty?" And then what does Devers say? It depends on the situation, the specific situation. If the woman went into, I mean, currently it'd have to be something like a back alley abortion, and an abortion provider did that, then the courts would make a determination on the measure of fault in that situation. That is all word vomit gibberish. What Devers is saying is the only type of abortion he can think of is some theoretical one that happens in a back alley somewhere because he doesn't understand that women can just go to clinics and have it done safely. And he thinks that if someone helped a woman in a back alley obtain an abortion, well, that counts as being an accessory to murder.
How many pregnant women have died due to lack of health care since Roe v. Wade was overturned? States with more restrictive abortion policy climates have higher total mortality, measured as a death during pregnancy or with following the end of a pregnancy, a recent by a team of Tulane researchers. U.S. material mortality rate remains consistently higher compared to other wealthy countries. Concurrently, the past decades have witnessed an increased policies access to abortion care across many states, by abortion being legal since Roe 1973. As a result, access to abortion care varies greatly across the U.S., states having only one abortion clinic. Using the National Maternal Mortality Data Access, National Center for Health Statistics in the state abortion policy context. It's 20. Pregnancy death rose by 56% in Texas after 21 abortion. That's crazy, dude. 56%. Number of women in Texas who died while pregnant during labor or soon after childbirth skyrocketed following the state's 2021 abortion on ban on abortion care, for outpacing slower rise in maternal mortality across the nation. A new investigation of federal public health data finds 2019 to 2022, the rate of maternal mortality cases in Texas rose by 56% compared with just 11% nationwide during the same time period. I can only imagine what it is now. According to analysis by the Gender Equity Policy nonprofit research group, sourced publicly available reports from the Centers for Disease Control Prevention and shared the analysis exclusively with NBC. Only one explanation for this staggering difference in maternal mortality, said Nick Cohen, president of the GEPL AI. The research points to Texas abortion bans as the primary driver of this. Texas, I fear, is a harboring of what's to come in other. It's crazy.
And then we might have to execute that abortion doctor. Like, this is his idea of good governance. And that's why even Republicans are like, we're not voting for this. You're crazy.
And that's coming from the crazy folks.
Okay, what about the covenant marriage bill? That was also going through the Judiciary Committee. Same place with like 2 Democrats only. So if Republicans work together, they could get that thing to the floor of the Senate. But guess
That's
what?
what's scary, man.
They didn't actually talk about the ethics of the covenant marriage thing. They actually talked about how the tax credit would work. And I'm going to play you a clip of this. It's a long clip, but I want to show
That's
you
all
this
they care
because
about is
remember,
money.
Dusty Deaver's bill said couples entering a covenant marriage at all could get a $2,500 tax credit if they file jointly. But according to his bill, the way to get a covenant marriage is you sign paperwork saying you are entering, and I'm quoting here, a lifelong covenant made before God. And
Okay, well, what if I don't believe in God?
And that led to some very interesting questions like, are you just giving a tax break to religious people?
Yeah,
Because that's just opening the door for loss.
coming from people that say they're the ones that are pro America. You gotta remember there's a separation between church and state. Whether you like it or not, that's what our country was supposed to be built on. That's how our country was supposed to be run. And if it doesn't, that's how you turn into Russia. That's how you turn into North Korea. That's how you turn into these dictatorships. It's not a good way to go. You believe in that's cool, but you don't start making laws because of what you believe in or because of what you think is morally right. Fuck your morality. We're all human, man.
Suits. What if atheists get married and want a covenant marriage because they want the tax break? Do they have to lie to the government that they're making this covenant before God? And are we saying it's basically okay for them to do that if they want the tax break? And they asked Devers about this, and I want to show you his completely insane response. Let me show you this right here.
So the first sentence that would have to be included in a covenant marriage says, "We do solemnly declare that marriage is a lifelong covenant made before God." How would that work for atheists or non-religious people?
He
If
ain't
they could
thinking about those folks, though.
sign the Declaration of Intent and make that statement, then that's how it would work.
Well, go ahead and lie.
Senator Brooks, you're recognized for a follow-up.
So to be able to get a tax credit of $2,500, if they signed it but didn't believe it, then they would be able to get it anyway?
This bill does not have a test on internal measure of assent to what they're saying.
Well,
Senator
Whole
Brooks,
bunch
you're
of
recognized for a
gibberish.
follow-up.
but it would have a religious requirement to be able to get a tax credit. Is that correct? If you're going to sincerely sign this before God, then obviously you must be religious to some degree.
Uh,
Yeah.
Senator, I appreciate the question. While I might wish that everyone would do as we say, I don't always do that, unfortunately, and I have to turn from my sin. I have to repent if I lie, and the same would go for anyone. But
So just go and do it because
this-
you're gonna have to repent
there
anyways.
is no distinction in this bill that says
Stupid motherfucker.
you may not lie before God. It's on that person's conscience. It's up for them to decide. So this bill doesn't have that test in it.
I love that whole clip because it's so obvious Dusty Devers has never thought through the
Mhm.
logical consequences of everything he's proposing here. He's like, well, I guess if you want to lie to God to get some cash, I suppose that would be okay. I mean, that's on you, really. Like, he has no clue what he's talking about. He has no idea that he's setting the state up to be sued and the state would lose. And so, guess what? The same Judiciary Committee full of Republicans voted 6-2 against passing the covenant marriage bill. And then they went 6-2 to shoot down his no fault divorce ban bill. All right. So those are the only three that came up for a vote right then and there, but they didn't go anywhere. That same committee, by the way, also voted 5-3 against a different bill that I talked about in a previous show, which would have installed 10 Commandments monuments inside and outside of the Oklahoma State Capitol. And the reason they voted against that bill, too, check this out. Senators in opposition to the measure
Way to make non-religious people coming into a government building feel very uncomfortable.
expressed concerns that it was unconstitutional, which would lead to other religious monuments, and went against the will of the people. Basically, that's a long way of saying, oh no, if we allowed the Ten Commandments monument on the Capitol grounds, we might have to say yes to Satanists too. So they voted 5-3 against that bill as well. All of this is happening just a couple of weeks after Dusty Deevers had to withdraw a completely different bill that would have eliminated certain special education services in public schools because a bunch of Republicans are like, why would you hurt special ed students in public schools? And they were so furious with him that even he backed down from that. And honestly, he apologized for that one because he's like, sorry, I didn't know I was a complete idiot about this. Like, I guess there's an open conversation to be had about whether extremists like Dusty Deevers or the guy who proposed the Ten Commandments thing, are they bad at their jobs because they can't get anything passed? Or are they really talented because their only goal is to get attention and not helping people? And they do get a hell of a lot of attention.
I'd rather have them get attention than get this shit passed.
But you got to take your wins when you can. And these guys are so extreme that even Republicans in Ruby Red, Oklahoma want nothing to do with their dumb idea.
Yet they say I'm extreme because I want my civil rights to be respected. That's crazy.
Ideas. So they'll do plenty of damage in other ways, but apparently there are some bridges that even they refuse to cross. And maybe that's a sign of hope when even Republicans in Oklahoma are like, no, thank you. Okay, gonna stop there with that story. What else we got here? What questions?